Calvin, it was here that Muhammad Abdulaziz first pulled the trigger. He injured one Marine, Sergeant DeMonte Chile. He started firing at this recruitment center right over my shoulder, never leaving his car.
The attack started here on Lee Highway, continued to Amnicola Highway. We talked to Tim White, the commanding officer at the Reserve Center, Amnicola Highway. He told us exactly what he saw and what he did that day.
When the terrorists crashed through the gate, I had my window cracked open and was just enjoying the fresh air of the morning, and I heard a crash and screeching tires.
Commander White says he couldn't see the gate from his desk, but thought there had been a crash on Amnicola Highway or on the Park Road in front of the Naval Operational Support Center.
Petty Officer Smith, who was mortally wounded on the 16th, and two other sailors ran into my office. And I could see from the look in their eyes that they were extremely alarmed and disturbed and terrified.
They told Commander White a car had crashed the gate, and he told them to go call police and ran back to his desk.
And then retrieved the weapon that I had there and fired. He
says when he stood up, he could see Muhammad Abdulaziz running down the sidewalk to the front of the building.
Obviously not law enforcement, obviously not a government official with a weapon. So I fired at him through my window, through the glass, and until I couldn't see him anymore. And he kept running.
At that point, he could hear the gunfire. And it was so loud, he thought the attacker was inside the mosque, but he was still outside shooting into the front of the building.
At that point, I didn't think that I could do much more with my weapon, and thought that the best thing I could do would be to go get help.
He tried to kick open his window, but that didn't work.
I ended up having to reach down and crank it open, and I think God used that to spare my life, because he was still outside of the building shooting into the building, and if I would have been able to get out immediately, he still would have been outside and probably would have seen me and shot me there. I reached down, opened the window, jumped out of my window, and then ran to the front gate, through the front gate, and as I was getting through the front gate, Officer Sean O'Brien was just coming from the back of his car where he had his rifle.
Commander White says Officer O'Brien told him to get behind his car, and they waited there for backup. 4 Marines and a Navy sailor were killed in that attack.
When I pulled my weapon out, I was 99% positive my career was over. And so once I shot at him, and I wasn't so concerned about my career, because that was an effort to save life, and life is precious.
Tim White survived the terrorist attack in Chattanooga, but the attack had a huge impact on his health months later. He felt stress from the attack. He felt stress from not knowing if he would be punished for firing his weapon. He also put a lot of pressure on himself to make sure the Purple Heart ceremony to posthumously award Petty Officer Smith was perfect. All that stress made him very sick.
Part of that sickness and stress caused me to get a blood clot, and then that broke off and went into my lungs, and I ended up in the hospital. Could have died from that.
Commander White is doing better now. He's working to do a better job of handling stress in all areas of his life, but also from that July day that he will never forget.
Since July 16th, I've tried to do everything in my power to prevent the terrorists from having any sort of victory in that attack. He murdered 5 great men that day. He didn't send us cowering into the corner, and we aren't so terrified that we're not going to do our job anymore. We have a renewed zeal to do our job with excellence, so that we can honor Petty Officer Smith, Gunny Sullivan, Staff Sergeant Wyatt, Sergeant Holmquist, and Lance Corporal Wells. I refuse to let them die in vain. And there are reminders of that day all over the Reserve Center. He showed me where his window used to be, and below that there are still shards of glass in the dirt below there. You know, Tim White's a very interesting man. He was a flight instructor before he came here. He also has a blog that he and his wife have. They talk about faith and family and health and a lot of different things there. We have a link to that in this story on our website, NewsChannel9.com.